Affinity Designer is set up for great UI design experience right out of the box. There's really not much you have to do in order to take advantage of all of its web design abilities, which we'll take a look at now. First of all, Affinity Designer supports layers, which is quite important if you want to make your design neatly organized. It's always a good idea to put your separate elements built in separate parts of a website design on distinct layers. Elements comprising the header should go on a separate layer. Elements comprising the sidebar should go on a separate layer, and so on. It's a good production technique to name the layers properly, instead of leaving the generic names such as layer 1, layer 2, etc. You should rename them and give them more logically descriptive names that would relate to the layer's content, for instance, header, footer, sidebar, article, etc. I would even go one step further and create sublayers with logically descriptive names. For instance, I'd create sublayers for just the navigation or branding blocks sitting inside the header layer. There's really nothing more indicative of a sloppy design and designer that holds all of its contents on just a single generic layer. If you are a fan of shadows, gradients, and blurs, you'll be happy to hear that Designer offers a variety of effects that you can add to your artwork. They are non-destructive, which means that they don't modify the artwork permanently, but are being dynamically added to it and can be changed anytime you want. It would be a lot more difficult to create website designs without artboards. They are the best way not only to design mobile versions of your website, but also to showcase your work. The most important thing you need to bear in mind when creating websites in Affinity Designer is that by default, when you create a new file, you will not create an artboard. The software lets you choose whether you want to create an artboard or just leave the default page. So remember that when you do want to create an artboard, when you're creating a new file, check the Create Artboard option. Of course, if you simply forget about it or change your mind, you can always use the Artboard tool to create an artboard. Website designs need pixel perfection, and you can use Designer's whole family of tools and options just for that. What's great about this feature is that you can simply choose a UI design snapping preset and be sure that the snapping options, perfect for web design purposes, are turned on. It will also turn on the force pixel alignment and move by whole pixels options just to make sure that all objects are snapping and moving properly. When you have the snapping turned on, Designer will show you when the objects are aligning, but also will indicate the distance in pixels between specific objects. The UI Design Snapping preset will also make your artwork snap to guides and snap to grid. So if you're using them in your workflow, UI Design Snapping preset will let you align the artwork perfectly with them. And if you've never used the grid before because it was too confusing, you'll be happy to hear that Designer offers an automatic grid, which finds the best settings on its own. You don't need to count everything on your own. The grid will change depending on the zoom value you set. Of course, if you want, you can change the grid to manual and enter your own values. You can also use the Guides Manager to put your guides precisely where you want them to go. Affinity Designer is primarily a vector design program, but it allows you to mimic the pixel environment your website designs will ultimately live in. For web design purposes, you can use the standard pixel view and a high pixel density retina view. This will let you preview your design as if it was made entirely of pixels. A website can't live without text. It is so important that many designers make it the center point of their designs, removing as many graphical elements as possible. And it's really easy to work with text in Designer. In addition to your standard character and paragraph options, you can create text styles which speed up the process of switching fonts within your design. You can have tens and tens of different text styles, and you can change practically every aspect of them. Designer comes with the ability to build your own libraries of assets that you can use when designing websites. It comes with predefined iOS 10 assets that you can just drag onto the pasteboard. Assets work kind of like symbols, but the difference between assets and symbols is that you can create libraries of assets that can be exported or embedded into a specific document, and you can't do that with symbols in Affinity Designer. So, say you're building a wireframe for your website. You would want just the schematic elements for that, right? Simply create your own representations of a logo, navigation system, blog post, etc. Then select it, and from the panel menu, choose Add from Selection. The element will go straight into the assets library and be waiting for you should you want to use it again. Affinity Designer comes with a separate workspace meant just for exporting elements of your design. It's called the Export Persona, and it's a great way to export sliced parts of your design. You can just grab the slice tool, create a slice out of a certain design element, and export it as a separate file. As you can see, there are a lot of tools and options that allow you to create gorgeous website designs in Affinity Designer. Tools and panels like the layers, artboards, snapping manager, etc. will help you in creating your own websites. But trust me that we just skimmed the surface here. There's so much more to designing websites using Affinity Designer, and you will discover it all as the course progresses. I guess at this point we could jump right into creating our first design, but I want this course to be something more than just a showcase of design techniques and processes. I want you to gain thorough knowledge on contemporary web design, so next we will take a look at the principles of good web design, followed by practical information on colors, typography, and elements used to put a website together.